When people say, looking back, I wouldn't change a thing, you always think, really? You wouldn't change a thing? I'd change lots of things. So I'm going to ask my friends Matt and Temple, looking back 20, 30 years ago when you started farming, what'd you do then that you wouldn't even consider doing now? What'd you do then that set the foundation for today? More importantly, what'd you do then that you're kind of surprised you got away with? That's what we're talking about in this episode of The Granary. On a farm, the work's never really done. We're calling the day anyway, because my friends from XtremeAg are coming over. You ready for a conversation with some real farmers about real issues? And the best part? You're invited. So pour yourself a drink, grab a snack, most importantly, pull up a chair. Welcome to The Granary. Hey guys. All right, Temple, you heard the question. What are you doing today that you look around and say, good God, I didn't do it like this 20 or 30 years ago when I started farming. How'd I get away with that?
I guess, honestly, Damien, I don't really know how to answer. That's a really loaded question, right? So, I mean, how do you answer a question like that? We started off a long time ago, and think about where we were then. We were tradition farming.
Yeah.
We were doing what our grandfather did. We did what his grandfather did. Not a lot changed in those years other than from horses to tires, but you're talking about plowing. You're talking about nothing that was conservation. Look at what we're doing now. We're cutting back on fertility. Yeah. We're cutting back passes in the field. We have a lot better grip on our ROI than we had a long time ago. Wouldn't you agree with that, Matt?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so you go to farm meetings, Matt, and they'll say things like the average farmer gets 47 seasons or something like that, right? That you're going to farm for 47 seasons.
Yeah, I think it's 45 crops.
45 crops. All right. Well, you're in your 30th, right?
I'm actually in my 35th.
You're in your 35th.
So I hope I get a little more than 45.
All right.
Can we go at 55?
All right. At 35, what are you doing differently than you did in year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5?
Well, a lot of my story is a little bit different. We got out of farming. We were in farming. There was poor choices made. We got out of farming. Things happened for the better. We got back into farming. Mm-hmm. So, it was a constant struggle to rent land, for my dad. When Temple said, we don't quite do things like our dad does. My dad was kind of a revolutionary guy that didn't have the tools to do the job. So and part of that was his fault. So once he got his shit together, I don't know if I can say that. It might get edited. But, once he got his shit together and he figured it out and he got an opportunity, and it always takes an opportunity. So you take my dad, ground zero. Now I'm fourth generation farmer. Okay. But I was removed from that and then interjected back into that when I was 12. So with a guy that made some bad decisions, but here, he kept his checkbook balance in his head. Mm-hmm. So I had a smart person to start with. So with him being revolutionary in the 80s, helped me to have that mentality. But what we had to do then was we had to make better than the neighbor. We're share rents. We had to make better than the neighbor did to be able to rent.
All right. So I posed in the introduction, Temple, I said, what is it you did 25, 35 years ago that set a foundation for today? I just heard there, you got to be better than the neighbor because you're trying to expand and you didn't come from generational wealth. That's what I just heard right there. So that means you got to really perform so that you can pick up ground. That's one of the things I just heard right there. I also heard from Matt, he says, all right, we're not doing things like Grandpa did. You said that also. What are you doing today that set your foundation? What do you look at Chestnut Manor Farms and say, you know what, I'm really, really damn happy about? I set a foundation by doing this.
Well, my father is kind of like what he was talking about. I think when you're talking about setting the foundation, our ancestors and our background, they're what set the foundation for us. Right. My dad was one of them guys that he changed everything. And he wasn't really traditional thinking. he didn't mind. So when I got to the point where I was, 16, 18 years old, and I wanted to grab a welder and I wanted to take a brand new piece of equipment, I wanted to rip something apart and I wanted to completely change things, he was all about those things. He understood those things. So you got to have that person behind you if you're going to start making them changes. Matt had that on his side. I had it on my side. So I think that kind of set the stage for me to be a guy that constantly thought way outside the box. So, where normal people think maybe a little outside the box, the guys in XtremeAg think extreme outside the box. And that's why we all get along so well.
And that's why sometimes we don't get along.
That's exactly
with others. Your dad probably got made fun of by a certain group of people because he was a revolutionary guy.
Yep.
Some of the things my dad did, they'd make fun of him in a coffee shop.
There could be another reason. Maybe sometimes you guys get in each other's throats. It's called too many roosters in the same pen. But anyway, that's a different story.
That's true.
All right. So I think it's kind of cool to talk about this because what is it that you think, okay, looking back, damn, I'm surprised I did that. Like, I've had people say, you mean you were 25 years old and you quit your job to dress up as Bill Clinton and you never had any showbiz experience in your life and you made it? I said, yeah. And I said, I didn't know any better. I didn't realize that you were supposed to have had acting classes. You were supposed to have done any of this. And so I look back like, I guess I kind of pulled something off that I'm not sure I'd try that now. But it's sort of the same for you. What'd you do that you look back and you're like, I'm kind of surprised I pulled that off?
I just took a lot of chances. I mean, financially, we didn't, my dad died in 2000, so, and he owned 80 acres.
Yes.
So it wasn't like, and so when he died, it was kind of like, when you throw a kid out in the ocean and say he's either going to swim or he's going to drown. And that's what happened to me. So I started taking what some people thought was crazy chances, leveraging myself in places that, people would say, that's crazy. He'll never make that work. And so that's what I did that I can't believe I'd done, which worked out.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people that are young guys and young gals in agriculture or in any small business where they get a little over their skis financially because they have to. And some of them don't make it. Did you get over your skis financially?
I think I'm still doing it today. But that's part of being a risk taker. Risk versus reward. You gotta be able to do that. I mean, I think good data now keeps us from making the mistakes that we would have made years ago. I mean, think about this. Mm-hmm. My dad, every night, every day, when he gets up in the morning, when he's sitting at the breakfast table with mom, he's 85 years old and he scratches in his diary every day at breakfast.
See if I still keep your diary.
At lunch. And at dinner. And he writes something in there, something that happened that day, what we were doing that day, what work we were doing, what accomplishment we've had, the prices, the rain, all that stuff. That was his data.
That was his operation center.
That was his operation center. That's exactly what it was. So he has that, and he goes all the way back to 1957.
Okay, so
he's got every book.
I've seen those journals.
I asked the question, or posed the question when we started this, that you hear people say, looking back, I wouldn't change a thing. And I just think, you wouldn't change a thing. I'd change a lot of stuff. There's a lot of heartache and restless nights and stress that can be avoided by changing things for most anybody. I imagine there's things that you wouldn't change, but there's a lot of things you would change. What thing do you look at and you're like, I tell you what, I would have never done this because it was too stressful or it didn't pan out. What's the one thing that you think I would never do that again? You got one?
I want to hear yours first.
I think, take what we know today, right, about how we apply fertility and what we do. All those years ago, what did we do? We listened to somebody else. We didn't have an agronomist that was helping us out. We were flying by the seat of our pants. We just assumed we knew what we were doing, and we flung it all out there. Think about the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we wasted over all those years. If I had to do something over again, taking back knowledge, I'd love to take that back and bring that forward. We'd be a lot further today than what we are.
There's a guy that's a comedian that has in one of his books, a chapter of his book says, "Oh, the money you will waste." And by the time you get to a certain point in your career in life, you look back, like you just said, and say, I threw $500,000 out there that didn't make me any money. Mm-hmm. You got that probably.
Yeah. I mean, that's happened before. I feel sometimes I would use the word blessed because, there's not a lot I would change. I mean, from my family to where I had a lot of different opportunities in sports and different things I could do. My mom passed away too. And so I was looking at different options I could look at. But looking back today, if I'd have took any of those other paths, then we wouldn't be sitting here today. As far as actually on the farm, a lot of what Temple's saying, I feel like I'm a better environmentalist today than I was then. We're all better at that than we were then. Because I'm 55 years old, I've got grandchildren now. So I'm looking at what can I make it better for them. When I was 25 years old, I was looking for whatever would be better for me. So I guess if I could change anything, it would have been a better conservationalist. I think's the way you say that.
Okay.
When I was in my 20s, and not waited till my 50s to get there.
What about on your situation? We're all a product of our, everything up until today. Do you sometimes look at your kids and say, you know what, I'm going to protect them from making a few of these mistakes? Or do you think, no, it's okay. They need to they need to fall down a couple of times and get on their knees?
I'll be honest with you. You can ask my boys. You can ask any one of them. You can even ask the girls. I am one of those people that want to throw them to the wolves and see what comes out. That's what my dad did with my mom and dad, with all of us children, me and my sisters. And, those are life lessons that you can't they're learned, not earned. It's very, very different. So I'm all about throwing them to the wolves. He did that with Lane.
Yeah, I wish Lane was here to tell that story, because the first farm he rented, and he was still finishing up his ag degree at the time. Yeah. And I think he thought in his mind that when he rented a farm, I was going to be there to help him every day. Yeah. And I threw him to the wolves. And 4 or 5 years later, he's like, I can't believe you did this to me, but it worked.
Yeah. Well, it makes you, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, kind of a thing. So is there a thing though that you look at and you say, hey, I got away with this, son, daughter, but most people don't. So the one thing I'll advise you against doing is this.
I got it.
What is it?
Paperwork, bookwork, data collection, all those things I struggled with. Yeah. I was good at certain things. I'm good at rolling in the dirt. I'm good at getting under your skin. Yeah, but I'm good at certain things. I'm good at mechanical stuff.
Mechanical stuff. You're good at in the field stuff. You don't want to be an office guy.
I don't want to be in the office. And Matt's taught me a lot about this, and Kelly as well. But Matt especially has sat me down before and said, your money's made right here in your office. Yeah. You have got to do a better job of this. And I agree with that. So, when I'm thinking about the next generational farm after me, I would like to have multiple kids involved, not just one of them. Alexander, Lil T, Madeline. You got somebody maybe doing the financial. Yeah. You got an operational guy, and you got a mechanical guy. If you have those three, you got it pretty locked down, and then maybe you throw in one that maybe gets an agronomy degree like Temple's working on right now. You throw them in there, that's a pretty powerful team, right?
So when you say the thing that you didn't do 25, 30, well, he's in his 35th year. You're just much younger.
Well, you take this back 15 or 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, you could do those kind of things, and you could hot dog, and you could cowboy, and you could send it out there, and you could not worry about his bad, because in your mind, just like his dad did, he has it in his mind. His checkbook balance is in his head, and he was probably pretty good at it. Mm-hmm. But you take huge chances like that. You could do it then where you can't do it now.
Money's too big?
Money's too big.
Operations.
You make one mistake now.
Margins are too thin. I mean, margins are way too thin to screw up in today's world. Yeah. If you screw up, you could screw up 10 times when Temple and I started and still be okay. We're in today's times where, if you screwed up this year, if a guy was behind to starting this year in my area, he might not be able to farm the following year.
You look back, so this is what? You're 51, too? 53. So 30th or so, 32nd season.
What?
32nd season?
When did you start farming?
I started farming when I was 15 years old.
Oh, okay. So you've been at
he's up there with you.
You're almost 40 seasons, 30 seasons. Yeah. All right. One thing are you still doing today that you're like, you know what? I've evolved on this, but by golly, I had the right idea then. Is it the conservation? Is that what you're going with?
No. I was aggressive then, making changes when I was younger. The only thing I wish I was a little bit more aggressive when I was young, because it becomes a little hard to be aggressive when you get my age.
You start to get a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
You're right.
All right. So, I want to get a couple last thoughts on this. We said, looking back. What thing, when you look back, have we not talked about that you look back? Is it nostalgia? Or you look back and say, man, I feel really good about this. You know, where you say, looking back, I'm glad I did this. For me, I'm glad that I quit corporate America and went off on my own. I've never regretted that. Okay. A bit days you regret it, but not a whole year you regret it. What do you look back at and say, man, I'm glad that 33 years ago I did this?
Oh, I say it all the time. Anytime I can. And Temple's heard this 100 times, but when you can work with the people you love, you can work with your family versus going to corporate like you're talking about, it's not really a job. And when you wake up every morning, even in the times we're in today, and you're still like, I want to go do this. Now, is there times that I don't want to do it? Yes, there is. But in general, you know, what I'm doing, the occupation I'm doing is the greatest rewarding. It's not the most glamorous, but it's the most rewarding family type career you could have.
You?
So I'm going to go with, when I got done high school, I was already farming, and at that time, Dad had lined me up, and he'd put me in the right place, and I was probably tilling, I don't know, maybe 1,000 acres, maybe 1,200 or something like that by the time I went to college. When I went to college, agriculture is not what it is today, what it was then. When it was way back when, people were embarrassed to be a farmer. We were embarrassed. When I was a kid,
coming out of the 80s, it was more that you just felt like a dog had been kicked too much because it just been.
Well, you were just I don't know how to say it, but you were, you were treated like a dirt poor redneck. I mean, is that fair to say?
With a straw hat and overalls.
Yeah. I mean, and it wasn't the cool thing to do. Well, now it's cool.
Yeah.
Like, you got kids that are dressing to be farm life. You got farm charm. You got all these different stores popping up. You got farm to table stuff, and it's all cool now. And it's great. What taught me how cool farming was is when my parents made me go to college. And when I went to college and I had to live in that environment and I learned what home was.
Yeah.
And when you got away from home, I took a whole different appreciation, because it was like when I came home from college, it was a light bulb went off and a door swung open and I saw things in a whole different light.
Well, that's the only thing get away. All right. This is my last question for both of you. I think that, I've said it before and I believe this. Too many people get rose colored lenses. Good old days. One thing that I like about XtremeAg, and I like particularly about you two, you might say, oh, it was neat farming with Dad, or it was this, but I've never heard, oh, the good old days. So when we say looking back, I've never seen you guys look back and somehow have this rose-colored lenses where you are silly about how much better it was then, because I'm not sure that it was. And I think that you guys would both agree with that. You guys don't do the rose-colored lenses. You look back, you learn from it, you move on. I guess I really respect that about you. But am I missing something? Do you get a little too nostalgic about the old days?
Well, I was always told, if you look back, you're backing up. I always look forward and every day be a better person and a better farmer than you were the day before. So I look back at memories and cool stuff like with my dad when he was alive. But as far as no, sir, I see the light at the end of the tunnel and I'm just trying to get to it.
I think for me, the only rose-colored glass part of it is with all this data that we're starting to collect now, and all of the accomplishments that we've had over the past, 5 or 6 years that you and I have known each other. When you look back at that and you look at the accomplishments and how far we've come, especially when you go back and you study the data, when you look at that, that's a little nostalgic for me, because
you always beat me.
That does happen.
Yeah, right.
Every year.
But when you look at our growths that we've done better every year with our own operations, we're not talking about XtremeAg.
Yeah.
We're talking about our family operations, that we are helping each other with our family operations. That means a lot to me.
Yeah.
That's a prideful look back, and it's a contentedness, but not complacency.
Well, and I would say the things we've done too, and Timble's the same way. Most of the guys that I deal with are, if we do gain knowledge this year, we make 10 bushel better on something.
Yep.
We're not going to hide that under a lamp and not show it to anybody. We want everybody to see that. We want our neighbors. We want our friends. We want everybody to know, hey, this works.
Yeah.
And for the betterment of agriculture in general.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't think that what you described is looking back in sort of the misery of, oh boy, it's just not like it used to be. I've never seen you guys do that.
It's not. It's proven fact. It's not better then than it is now. I mean, look at how we live, what we drive, what we do.
Yeah.
You know, the things we can do and still farm, the equipment we drive today. I mean, my picker has a massaging heated seat. Every day at 3:00, I got a massage.
Wait a minute.
I don't look back and wish I was on an old 9-cab picker.
Jeez.
If that's what you're asking. I get a massage every day at 3:00 during cotton harvest.
I can't talk to him anymore. I don't even know what to do with him.
All right, we talked about looking back and the things you'd change, the things you wouldn't change, the things you're glad you did, the foundations you set, and more importantly, are you looking back with prideful nostalgia, or are you looking back with hostility that somehow things were so bad today? The point is, you know what? You can join us here and pull up a chair at the Granary. We're going to be doing this a whole bunch, and we want you to come and join along for the ride. So you know what? As we always say, pull up a chair, grab yourself a snack, pour yourself a drink, and we'll see you next time here at this very table in the Granary.